Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you'll learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And for 45 episodes now, can you believe it's been 45 episodes?
No.
Jacqueline and I have gone deep into our inner life. The emotional, the mental, the spiritual, the shadow, the protectors, the forgiveness, the consciousness. And we love this terrain, but if you actually spend an ordinary day with us, you notice something we almost never talk about on the show. A huge amount of our life is physical. The training, the running, the food, the recovery of the body. So we're going to lighten it up a little bit today, because the truth is that keeping our vessels running in a good condition might be one of the most foundational things we can do. And it's not separate from our spiritual work, but it lies underneath it. And I like to think about it, you can't transmit or receive a clear signal through a neglected instrument. So today we want to talk about our genuine passion for health and fitness as two people becoming more whole, and as a couple and a family doing it together. What changed for us, and why after a few years of being healthy, did we both get really disciplined in the last few years? What happens to your emotional and mental state when you start doing the hard things on purpose? You can tell that's my topic. And how did this become something that draws us and our whole family together? All this and more in the next hour. And as always, for our live viewers, the show is going to be open to questions in the second half. Throw them in the chat or call in at 1-800-930-2819. And I'm going to start asking you questions. So we've always been very active, but literally, I don't know if you've seen it the way I have. It's something shifted in the last year or 2 years, or some timeline there. We got a little bit more serious about it. And I'm asking you this question because when I was sitting with this, I really credit you for that shift in gear, this sort of shift in intensity and taking it more seriously. That something happened, and it was a year ago or 2 years ago or somewhere in there, where I think I watched you pick up your program, and it made me want to pick up my program.
You're always in competition.
Right?
Yeah. Just for those of you listening, you have to know that from the day that we met, doesn't matter what I do, he does it more and he does it better. And it used to be that I was always the more active, more healthy person in my life. And now every time I get there, he trumps me. So I think we're actually kind of inspiring each other.
Inspiring is the right word.
Yeah, there you go. But there's a bit of healthy competition going on.
Yeah, for sure.
What changed? I actually think for me, in a lot of ways, it started when we were in Calgary. And when we were in Calgary, my body started screaming. I got horrific sciatica down both legs. My neck and my shoulders got really, really painful. And pain that had sort of been with me throughout my life, it jacked up to the point that it was starting to really grate on me emotionally. And I had this real feeling like my body was trying to talk to me, and I needed to listen or my body was going to fail me.
In fact, we did a podcast on that chronic pain way back when from Calgary. I remember this.
Yeah. But it inspired, as you asked me the question, which, just so those of you listening know, if we ever fumble, most of what we talk about, we're talking about here for the first time. So we're not prepped for this, except for the introduction. I think what I'd say is I really had this really like full-blown awareness that my body was cracking on me. And if I didn't change something, then it was going to fail me entirely. And what happened was everything amped up for me. So like my daily practice, meditation and writing and yoga amped up, but then so did my daily expenditure of energy in the gym and exercising outside. I think that's what started.
Okay.
If I was to take it a little bit further, I would also say that I really, for me anyways, I think that my observer or witness, as we would call it in different places, has become more and more attuned. And I started to wake up to see all the places where our family wasn't operating as healthily as it could in terms of exercise, diet, hydration, etc. And this desire to once I began to commit to a more disciplined practice, I suppose, my desire to live a healthier life was inspired exponentially. And my experience is that each time one of us jumps a little bit, all of us end up following and jumping. So it feels a little bit like when one of us gets a little bit healthier, everybody wants to rise to meet that person. And it's an interesting experience because that speaks very much to frequency, right? As one person's frequency increases, at least in this household, what seems to happen is that the other people start to want to meet that frequency and rise up rather than pulling the other one down.
Yeah.
Does that feel
It does. Yeah. I remember that coming out of Calgary, we came home and our daughter that she went all in on getting healthy and exercise, eating properly, and like really researching nutrition, like in a really healthy, wholesome way.
Yeah. And what we saw in Calgary was what happened when she went through a tough period of time emotionally, and she was eating emotionally, and she was, I would say, edging on a more depressive side of things. We saw everything sort of unravel, and she came home, and yes, she went for it, and she brought all of us up with her too.
Yeah. And I think my inspiration was, I think I observed you in your health journey. Just when you went to that next gear, and I think you basically dropped down to your high school weight, right, and looked super healthy and vibrant. And I was feeling this calling, like, I've always prioritized health and fitness. I was going to the gym a lot. I was running a lot, and I could tell like I was just something missing in it. And I was trying all these different things, like I'm going to try intermittent fasting, or I'm going to do this and that. In my head, I was telling the story. I have 5 extra pounds to lose, and I really convinced myself of this story, and it's so funny when I look back at it, because I'm really good at like being disciplined and monitoring, but I convinced myself that stepping on the scale, I didn't need to do that. I'm just going to go by my belt weight. I sort of avoided the scale for 4 years for no reason.
Oh, so now I'm understanding where you were taking the original conversation.
Yeah.
Are we having a conversation about peptides here?
We can't. No, we can go there.
Okay.
Wasn't going to go there. We can go there afterwards. No, but it's like, and in this pursuit for, it's almost like I had this sort of spiritual moment where you and I had a conversation, and out of that conversation, I'm gonna say what it was. I convinced myself of the thing I didn't really want to do, which is take a really good side view of myself in the mirror. And I was like, damn it, you have to be honest with yourself. You have a belly, get on the scale, weigh yourself. And I got to the place where I'm at least 10 pounds heavier than I'd been when I felt healthy. And I just, at that point, it's like enough is enough. And I said, I want to get to this place where I just feel better in my body. And I just for me, it was I totally changed my diet. I cut out a whole bunch of carbohydrates. I got really disciplined with eating, added a bit more to my workout. And then over about a 6-month period, I ended up losing that extra 10 pounds and 10 more pounds. And now I sit at this place where like, man, I'm at like a weight that I feel so good in my body now that I haven't been at probably since high school.
And this might not be a popular thing to say, but one of the things that you cut out was one of the things that we're all told to do, which is you cut out protein powder.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I think it's an important thing to share, because on some levels, so much of what we're guided to do doesn't necessarily work with our bodies. And so there's a place of intuitive knowing about what your body needs and doesn't need that we need to actually start to wake up to.
Yeah. And a big part of my journey in the last 7 years is I've shared it in the show before, but I'm a vegetarian. And I wasn't a particularly healthy vegetarian at first. I became more healthy, but still didn't have amazing vegetarian eating habits, mostly because I don't like cooking. And so I'd like be sourcing my protein through protein powder and things like that, eating too much bread. And I just got super strict and disciplined and cut that out of the exercise. And I'm at this place today, which is the motivation for this podcast, of probably feeling the best in my body that I have since, again, I was in high school.
No, it's funny. I was thinking about this on the weekend when Layla and I went for a run. And we were talking about emotional eating, because that's something that I've struggled with throughout my life. And it's something that sort of is a familial tendency that showed up. And I remember, I'll never actually forget, because it rings in my head all the time, is my mom was always very disciplined in her eating. And she would open a bag of chips and she'd have 4 of them. You've seen it.
You know, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it drives me crazy too. But she used to say, when we would challenge her on it, or we would question her eating habits and whether they were actually healthy or she was just really disciplined, she would often say to us, when you've been in a place in your life where your body is sick, you will do anything on the planet to be healthy, because you don't want to ever have to experience that sick again. And I understood that. She had struggled with cancer twice when we were growing up, but I only really get it now. And what I would say is that over time, through the work you and I have done, physically, emotionally, and otherwise, but let's speak to physically, I don't like feeling over full anymore. I don't like the feeling of what it feels like to have eaten a bag of candy or a bag of chips or whatever else, you could go to shove food down your throat. There's something that shifted where knowing what it's like to feel like a clean and healthy vessel, as you said, feels so much better than the other, that the other just feels like I'm polluting my body.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, I can tell you that none of us are perfect, or maybe we are, because we're not. We go out for ice cream as a family.
I love ice cream.
We go out for ice cream as a family. We eat French fries. We do things that aren't good for us, but we do them because we choose them, rather than being chosen, rather than being, well, I was going to say rather than them choosing us, but rather than being driven by an unconscious need to fill something that's empty.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I'm just thinking this arc about cutting stuff out, right, to make our bodies feel better. And when you have this place where you, like, I think as you're paraphrase your mom, if you almost die, you're gonna do anything to keep your body healthy. And I had that experience with alcohol and drugs, and so cutting those out and cutting other things out, and how good I started to feel mentally, physically, spiritually from that. And within that, I think I'd remained physically healthy, like above average amount of exercise and whatnot, but I hadn't really gone all in like I had previous in my life. And if I'm honest about it, I think particularly those first few years, I think I was overly focused on that ego of mine showing up, and for the reasons I wanted to get healthy, to look good, to like beat people in competitions, to overextend myself. And I think I used to use exercise and health for vanity, but also to overcompensate, or not deal with my feelings. And I think that's why I avoided that aspect of it until later on.
What do you mean you avoided it?
I deprioritized it probably earlier on in my recovery, and prioritized things like meditation and spiritual reading and yoga and things like that, which again, they're all good, but I deprioritized physical health. And previously I had prioritized physical health as the first thing. And now I'm coming around full circle, at least in my journey, to recognize actually my priorities now are definitely the physical health as the foundational basis to build everything else upon.
Well, which is how the chakra systems are built too.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I think we need a healthy vessel in order to be able to be clear enough. I'm going to use the word channel, and I don't mean it as channeling God or Jesus or anybody else for that matter. What I mean is we need a healthy vessel in order to be able to allow the information that wants to come through us to come through us with ease. Because when the vessel itself is unhealthy, distortions happen inevitably. And so the healthier our cells are and the healthier our bodies are, the less work they have to do to keep us well, the more attention can be paid to other things.
Can you describe the difference between, how your channel is operating now versus it might have been 5 years ago? Like, what do you notice?
I think we need a whole podcast for that. What do I notice? I notice that I have more access. I have more access to information. I'm clearer. I think in a lot of ways, our channels are a perfect reflection of the health of our bodies. And I think that there was lots of toxicity in my body that I wasn't even aware of. I mean, I look back at photos of myself from 5 years ago, and I don't even recognize that person anymore. And what I see when I look at those pictures is somebody who's carrying so much emotional weight, like so much heaviness. And I don't just mean physical heaviness, although it translates into physical heaviness. I see somebody who's carrying the weight of the world. And over time, that's really shifted. And I hear myself often when we're teaching yoga saying things like, drop your shoulders. The weight of the world is only yours if you choose it, right? Like what we carry, it's up to us if we carry it or we let it go. And I think that I'll come back to your question. What's changed is I recognize that I have a choice. I have a choice in what I carry. I have a choice in what I put in my mouth. I have a choice in how I spend my time. And when I choose to do things that are life affirming, the frequency of the universe seems to flow through easily. When I lose that choice, when I move into a reactive place, or I move into a place where all I'm identifying with is my emotions, and I lose access to the witness or the observer, I lose choice. And that's what's changed. And so, yeah, I think that's what's changed. And it's funny because that's a mentor, teacher, friend of mine, Michael Talbot Kelly, always used to speak about Freedom Mountain. And I've spoken about Freedom Mountain on this for different reasons. But he'd speak about it, but he'd never really tell me what it was. And then one day I remember talking to him and he asked, did you find it? And I said, yes, but it's not what I thought it was. What I thought it was that we would just get to a place where you're totally free of all your shit. And what I realized is that's not it at all. Freedom Mountain is when you get to a place where you recognize that you have choice. You have choice to choose things that are life affirming, or you have choice to choose things that are life negating. And when you sit in the seat of being able to make that choice, something changes. So when you choose to eat the ice cream cone, or you choose to have the french fries, or you choose to have a day where you just lie on the couch and you don't move your body, that's different than when those things are choosing you over and over and over
Yeah. It's interesting. You quote Michael Talbot Kelly, but I'm going to quote Jocko Willink with a similar thing where he talks about where the intersection between discipline and surrender, the intersection of freedom. And it sounds antithetical, but it's so true, because you hit the nail on the head. Where's the choice? Where do we have control? Well, majority of the universe is completely out of my control, right? Although many attempts to try to control it,
again.
but it's out of my control. I can accept that. Can I surrender to that? Where do I have discipline? Well, what's the starting basis? I certainly have discipline to what I put in my mouth, how much water I drink, how much, for the most part, how much sleep I get. Do I do some exercise for my body? Do I have a lot of choice and control over how I maintain my own vessel? And then it starts to break away from there. I can meditate and I don't have full choice about how that impacts me, but things like how many calories I eat, the exercise I do, things like that, I can exert some control there. And if that's where I should take my control, that's where I should put my energy, and then surrender to the rest. And that makes a whole lot of sense.
So I'm wondering if we can drop the word control for a sec.
Please.
Okay. Well, I just heard something that I think is really, it's fascinating actually in what you just spoke, which is in a world where so many different things are happening at the same time, and we don't have, in your words, control over a lot of them. We can find ourselves playing out victim mentality really powerfully. I mean, if you look around or you listen to a lot of the dialogue that's going on in the world, a lot of it is victim mentality. And we all get caught there at different times. I just got caught there this weekend for a few hours. And in that place of victim mentality, we have no personal responsibility. The world is to blame. There's nothing, we can't do anything about it. What I heard you say when you were speaking about, I can control this, I can control this, I can control what I put in my mouth, what I eat, how much I sleep. What you're actually doing is you have choice in those things. Yes. And you're taking personal responsibility for yourself, because that's one sphere in your life where you do have a say.
Yeah.
Where you do have capacity to be you are the actor in your life, and you get to decide what that actor is doing or not doing. And from that standpoint, when we're able to take personal responsibility for our health, we begin to build a muscle that affects the rest of our life. And you quoted Jocko. I'm going to quote. Actually, I'm not going to quote because I would bastardize the quote very quickly, because I can never remember things exactly as they're spoken. So I'll say it differently. When I was doing my teacher training in Kundalini Yoga, and we had these 40-day practices that we had to do consistently, and I would consistently break the 40-day practice and have to restart it because the rebel in me didn't want to do it. Once I started doing it consistently, what I came to know was grace. On the other side of discipline laid grace. Mm-hmm. And my experience of grace was that when I could show up for me over and over and over again, notwithstanding the world getting in my way, notwithstanding my own excuses, notwithstanding how crappy I might have felt one morning, but I could show up for myself over and over and over again. What I actually learned was this feeling of faith, trust. I would say faith and trust in me. And that discipline is what brought me to this place of believing in myself, trusting that I could show up for myself day in and day out, no matter what. And that discipline commitment piece, it does lead, it leads to pure freedom in a way that I think it's ineffable. It's a little bit hard to explain.
But the way you describe it is beautiful. And I've said this before too, like that discipline to self is the greatest act of self-love you can show yourself. And it's almost like you're pushing yourself to something you don't want to do in the moment, like going for that early morning run, or like, eating that same thing again, or jumping in the cold plunge, whatever your thing is. And it's sort of like, it's counterintuitive that it's an act of self-love, because then it goes on to build trust in yourself, faith in yourself, the resiliency that if I can do this, I can do the next thing. And these are all these little micro things that, again, we have the ability to affect and change. Maybe control is the wrong word. And where I was going with it was this, it's, the foundational aspect of my life is the serenity prayer. God granted the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, pretty much everything. Courage to change the things I can. A very small subset of things that have to do directly with me, and the wisdom to know the difference. And if I can just put my focus and attention, there's a very, very small subset of things in my life that I have some ability to affect change in. If I put my energy there and I get really serious about it and do it in a really loving way to myself, miracles will happen in my life. It's true. And again, that physical foundational thing is that area, that real locus of, I use the word control focus. We decide that one. It's not that easy. We have time constraints. We have all these other things that show up, but we can always fit something in.
Yeah. So what's showing up for me, agreed. And I think that it's not just, it is those physical things. And it's also the meditation and the breath work and all of those other things. They're all part of the same, they're all part of the same puzzle.
Like manage your feelings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But what's coming up for me, which is interesting, and I think we'll come back to it right after the break, is when do you know when it's too much? How do you know that you haven't gone too far? Because the pendulum can swing from one side to the other, and neither no exercise or taking care of your diet and going crazy are healthy. There's somewhere in between that actually is the middle path that we'd want to walk. How do you know when it's too much? Do you think about that? We'll come back to it at the break.
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, that's good. Okay.
Tune in to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living, with me, Jacqueline.
And me, Chris, on Transformation Talk Radio, every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and to heal, and how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Witness the field of potential that arises when you take personal responsibility and become the divine creator in your own life.
Visit theway-healing.com for more information.
Hey everybody, oh my goodness, we have got talk radio for all of it.
Really, thank you for blazing the trail for women in talk radio and just being such an inspiration to me and so many other people. What you're doing is so awesome. And, without people like you there to really step out of the box and go for it, I don't know if someone like me would have ever ended up here, but I'm so happy to be here. And I just want to thank you for everything you're doing. You're one of my major inspirations.
What if your training isn't enough? The Multicultural Mindset Podcast invites counselors and therapists to unlearn the one-size-fits-all approach. This isn't cultural competence. It's a way of being that brings racialized experiences from the margins to the very center of care. Let's stop pathologizing Black pain and start challenging the system that created the bias in the first place. Visit newseasons.training to subscribe.
Living a life by design. It's the journey back to you and living 365 days of purpose with host Esther Graham. Tune in every second and fourth Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Discover that what is possible is already in you. God designed a phenomenal life for you. At Living a Life by Design, Esther helps you ignite the energy behind your personal journey. For more information, visit fddwomen.com.
Let your dreams and not your doubts drive your decisions. Often, like 99.9% of the time, it will require you to stretch yourself into unknown territory.
Welcome back, everybody. So just before the break, we started to talk about what happens when exercise, fitness, etc., diet goes too far. And just asking the question, because what often happens when we shift and change is that we move from one side of the pendulum and we swing all the way to the other side until we find our way back to the middle path, which I think is essentially where we're all ultimately working to get to, which is how do we hold both polarities of, being lazy and doing nothing and feeling unwell, and then the opposite side where there's too much going on, and finding a way back into balance where we can live a healthy life, but we're not focusing so much on one thing or the other. And I asked the question to Chris because, as most of you know, Chris has struggled with addiction in his past. And there were times when I watched him, both in his discipline around eating and then in his discipline, which is next level, around exercise, and wondered, is this not just another form of addiction? And I've asked him those questions really openly. And I'd love for you to sort of respond.
Yeah, and I think the easiest way for me to frame it, even for myself, as I'm thinking about this, is the sort of before and after. And in the before, I was very, very active, but I would take on this exercise always as an obsession and an achievement. An example would be, I got into running, and then I went from running 10Ks to half marathons to ultra marathons, and ultimately I had like a near-death experience on like some savage ultra marathon where you had to climb 3 mountains, right? And that was typical. And then I moved from that to like, okay, well, I can't run anymore because I've had these issues. So I went into boxing, and next thing I know, I'm at the boxing gym 6 days a week, sparring, like just again taking it too far. Ultimately ends in a back surgery. And that was my patterning throughout, this period where I'm struggling with an addict's mind, if not in active addiction at that time. And I was using exercise as just another achievement. I was using exercise to distract myself, to numb myself. And if I look back at it, yeah, it was probably affecting my relationships. I was spending too much time in this obsessive behavior on this one thing. It wasn't part of a well-balanced, be healthy, holistic approach to life. There's no meditation in there. There's no anything else. It was just all in
stretching.
Yes, stretch. What was that? I never heard of stretching, right? It was all in exercise or all in work or all in some other thing. And that was that period. And now as I've come back into it, it's like, my main objective now is I use the word whole all the time. I want to feel fully integrated in my body. I want a very active parasympathetic nervous system. I want my channel open. I want to feel at peace. What is it that I need to do with my exercise and health that facilitates that? So I'm very out of my way to make sure I'm cross-disciplined everything. I go on 25-minute runs, not 5-hour runs. I do a little bit of mountain biking. I do some skiing. I do all sorts of different stuff all over the place. And I'm really conscious not to do any one thing too much, and just try to have a really balanced, fun approach to things. And I don't need to compel to enter all sorts of races and competitions anymore. I just like to have fun with it all.
What happens when your body says, I've had enough? what happens when your body gets, because I mean, I've watched you push through that and tell me that, you know, go David Goggins on me and doing hard things is good, keep going. And then I've watched you do the opposite, which is you take a full week off and don't do anything because your ankle feels a little sore or your wrist is a little sore.
Yeah, I'm still, you know, I'm still a student of that. I'm still trying to learn the balance between, okay, my mind's telling me it doesn't want to do this run or doesn't want to do that. That's the thing I actually actively want to push through. That's the place where it's like, no, hard things are good. And sometimes I'll start my run, like just a 25-minute run on a rainy day. And I'm like, oh, this run sucks. And I'm like, yeah, good. Right. Like that's the stuff I want to overcome. And then because of my history of back surgeries and other things like that, it's like, when I feel these things in my body that really tell me you need to stop, I can just stop now. I'm not trying to prove anything anymore. I'm not trying to get anywhere with any of this stuff, except to feel really good in my body.
Because what's the offshoot of feeling really good in your body?
I'm at peace. That's the main thing. And I mean, that was like in my mind, one of the motivations for this discussion today is after particularly the last 6 or 7 months where I shed a bunch of weight that I've probably been carrying around for, I don't know, 30 years, like that extra 10 pounds that I didn't need. And I cannot believe how good I feel in my body, but mostly good I feel in my head. Like just how grounded and at peace I am. And I know it has a large part to do with how I feel physically. And I more just want to share that with people. Like it's amazing. It's worth doing.
So one of the things that keeps coming up for me that's been super helpful for us as we've moved through this journey, and we've done it really differently and collectively. I mean, we spend a lot of time exercising together and our needs for exercise look very different. He still goes way harder than I go. And part of what I'm learning through this process is actually honoring what my body says and what my body wants, rather than doing what Chris is doing or our daughter's doing, or, you know, this Instagram post tells me what to do, or this gym tells me what to do. Really learning how to intuitively listen to my body and do what feels right for it has become really, really important. And one of the biggest gifts that has come into my life, and I would say it's a gift and a curse on some levels, is our whoops. So
I thought you were going to say me, the whoop. Okay.
You're not a curse. You're a gift most of the time. No.
What is a whoop?
A whoop is a tool, just like an Apple Watch is a tool,
like or
an Oura ring is a tool.
Device,
yeah, it's a tracking device, I suppose. Yeah, that kind of makes it sound creepy, but it tracks all of our metrics. So it's tracking our sleep. And no, I'm not sitting here advertising the Whoop. It could be any kind of tracking device that you have access to. This is just the one that we're using.
We receive no financial compensation.
It's the one we're using because Chris heard about it from a friend, and that's what we decided to use. So because it's constantly telling us whether we're sleeping enough or we're not sleeping enough, whether we're exercising enough or we're not, when we're over exercising, and what that looks like for our recovery, and for Chris in particular, what that looks like for his Whoop age, which he has been boasting about for a little while. And, you know, every Sunday when our Whoop age comes out, it gets thrown in my face.
Meant to encourage you.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's like all the various metrics on, again, it's like it's both a blessing and a curse, because I look at it a lot, but I pay a lot of attention to just some of the stuff it tracks, like how much of my week I've been in like a higher heart rate zone, how many steps I have in a day, what my heart rate variability is. It's actually quite an important metric to me because it tells me a lot about my parasympathetic nervous system. what my resting heart rate is, like all these various things that are all worth monitoring. And the way they compile it is they come up with a, have your biological age, then they have what's called your whoop age. And there's a tracking of the metrics that you work on throughout the week and how they go into your whoop age. And it just creates this, creates this path to health and to focus, to longevity that just keeps me super motivated, super locked in to try to keep all these variables that are variables for longevity on the front of my mind and part of my daily routine.
I'm going to do something that's probably going to embarrass you, but I mean, why not? You're so proud of it. How much younger is Cristiano Ronaldo on his whoop than he actually? I am totally. You get to tell the whole world, honey.
From what I understand, it's 12.4 years.
He's 12.4 years younger than he actually is, than his chronological age. How much younger are you?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay. Whoa! How much younger?
12.7 years.
Yeah. So he's beat Cristiano Ronaldo.
I spent 4 months chasing Cristiano Ronaldo in my week, so I'm proud of it. But that's the thing. I joke about it, but it's been one of those things that's been a real benefit to my life, and I think to your life too. Is there's really healthy things to track in there. And it's not even obsessively tracking. It's just pointing out, you know what, I didn't get a lot of steps today. Why don't I go for a walk? It's like a nice night, or it just points out I went to the gym 3 times, not 4 times this week. Do I have it in me to go one more time? And just those little tiny micro pushes make all the difference.
And I would say something a little bit different. My whoop age is not anywhere close to 12.
It's pretty big though. What is that? What is it?
I'm like 5 years younger than I am. But for me, it took a year of working really hard to change it by 1.5 years. Okay. So everybody's different. We all have different bodies. We all have different ways of doing things. But what I would say is the metrics in it helped me to see a few things. One, that my resting heart rate was too high. 2, that my heart rate variability was way too low. And being able to actually then strategize, how do I work with this? Which I wouldn't have had any idea about had I not been wearing it. But more importantly, or equally importantly, it measures your sleep. And it shows how much consistent sleeping, we talk about sleep hygiene and how important it is to be able to go to bed around the same time every night and wake up around the same time every morning. And what happens when what's the word I'm looking for? When you go off course on that, how much that actually affects your recovery is profound. And so it starts to build, or it starts to give you ideas around how you can actually begin to feel better. But one of the things that really strikes me is my nature has also always been to push hard. Now, in comparison to Chris, I don't push very hard at all. But for me, my nature was to push hard. My nature was to exercise when I was tired. And pardon?
You push hard.
Okay, but not if I'm comparing myself to you. But we're not going to compare ourselves in this podcast. But what the whoop has actually taught me, what it's taught me by really studying its metrics and looking at my own recovery is when I take a day off because I'm tired, or I pushed too hard the day before, or maybe just because my work schedule is too busy and I don't have time. What I watch is my recovery go way up the next day. And it's a beautiful reminder that we can push, but we also need to rest. And we can push and we also need to rest. And for me, that's been really profound, actually, and really important.
Yeah, well said. What is a day in the life of what's a week in the life of you in terms of your exercise routine?
I do some form of yoga every day. It's probably no more than 20 minutes. Stretching, moving. For me, it's Kundalini yoga. So it's often just warm-ups, just to wake up my body. when I don't do it, I can really feel stiffness in my body. I probably run 5 to 6 days a week. And we were talking and laughing the other day about me bringing the 25-minute run to Chris. I'm laughing because 25 minutes of running is plenty for me. It would have been laughable for him at the past, and now it feels plenty. And part of that 25-minute run is I can fit it in when I have an hour between clients. There's no reason why at any day of the week that 25-minute run can't happen, even if it's at the very end of the day or first thing in the morning. And I weight train 4 days a week. And my weight training isn't grunting, moaning, making sounds like I'm gonna drop something when I'm weight training. It looks like consistent effort. And then there's, playing tennis with the kids, or pickleball, or, I don't know what else. Hiking. This summer I've done lots of hiking with my daughter.
Walking with friends.
Yeah, most of my activity is, or social time is spent walking rather than sitting in a restaurant. Yeah, I think that's pretty consistent. I probably get about 25,000 steps a day.
I was about to ask you that. Yeah, that's right. That's a really good benchmark that's how active, that's very active.
But none of the exercise, except for my workouts when I work out with my husband, are very exhausting. They're all sort of energizing. That's what I would say. What about you?
A similar setup. Yeah, totally. Thank you for the 25-minute run, because I now run 4 to 6 times a week, and I'll do one longer run on the weekends, but otherwise it's that 25-minute run. If I have a break between clients, I can fit it in. So there's almost no excuse not to do it. And then my weight workouts are probably about 5 times a week. I love it. I love lifting heavy weights. Just for me, it makes me feel great. In fact, we have a home gym in our garage. So again, there's zero excuses. Some days I'm super busy. I'll even just go out there and do like 3 20-minute sessions to get it in.
At different times.
At different times. Yeah, just there's no, if it's right there's no excuse not to do it. Yoga once a week. Meditate to some extent every day. Lots of walking. Again, a few less steps than Jacqueline. I probably get an average of about 20,000 steps a day. But then I do it all so I have this functional fitness. So I was in the downhill mountain bike park at Whistler this weekend. Fell badly, but I'm still okay. I ski 30 to 40 days a year. I still go to my boxing gym occasionally. I work out with a trainer, like all these various things. I just try to mix it all up, but very active every week. But again, there's not any one day where it's crazy. It's sort of like this sort of consistent 60 to 90 minutes a day of physical activity every day, though. Yeah. With maybe one day off, but pretty much every day.
And a lot of that time is time we spend together.
Yes.
A lot of that time is time we run together and time we work out together, which is really nice. And it's really changed the landscape of our family unit from the standpoint that our daughter's totally engaged. Both boys in the house are more or less engaged depending on the time, but how we spend time together as a family is most often being active.
Yeah, the best talks to have with kids are on runs with Layla, on the golf course with boys, or on the chairlift with everybody.
Yeah,
like this is, or hiking, right? This is like this very all our free time is associated with active activities because the whole house is healthy.
And because we're being active together, our attention is focused on each other instead of on all of our devices, which when we're sitting around watching, and I say like in air quotes, watching a movie because everybody else has a screen in front of their faces, there's not a lot of engagement. But when we're out being active together, something shifts and changes, which is lovely.
What about diet? What does food look like for us?
Well, I have so much to say on that because it's changed so dramatically, especially it's changed dramatically in the last year or two. But it's changed dramatically for me. It's changed a lot since being with you, actually. So I'm going to start back there for a second because when I met you, food was a huge part of my life. And when I say that, I mean going out for dinner with friends, cooking beautiful food, hosting dinner parties, all of those things. It was a really big deal in my world. And so was alcohol. And when I say that, I don't mean like alcohol was a big part of my life, but it was a big part of my social life, which meant, you know, we'd go out for dinner and we'd share bottles of wine. We would do whatever. And then I met you and you were in recovery. And I remember first thinking, how am I ever going to go out for dinner with him? It's going to be so boring. And I think for a little while, it did actually feel kind of strange because it was totally different for me. Then I learned that if I wanted to have a glass of wine on my own, I could have a glass of wine and still have dinner with you. But wine and food somehow became a lot less interesting. And food became what it was meant to be, which is sustenance, right? It's like we're meant to eat for fuel. We're not really meant to eat for other reasons. Now, food's a beautiful thing, and I still love really good food. But on a daily basis, food is sustenance. It's no longer an activity per se. And food looks like making sure that I have enough fruits and vegetables. Well, I don't ever have to make sure of that really because it's the bulk of my diet, and enough protein and enough healthy fat. We eat a lot of the same things every day, right? Chris is really good at making egg bowls.
The power of the egg bowl. eggs, beans, and sauteed vegetables, a little bit of salsa.
So, and they're fabulous and they sustain us. Both of us don't really eat breakfast anymore. So we're sort of in an intermittent fasting phase until around noon every day. And that's just something that we tried all of these different things. And then it just sort of became part of our natural rhythm.
It's just only we get hungry, don't we?
No.
Yeah.
Dinner is often salad with hard-boiled eggs, tofu, maybe for me some chicken, or fish or beef or whatever. But it's all pretty simple. We've tried lots of different sort of ways of eating, and we've both landed intuitively. You know, for a year, Chris is a vegetarian. For a year, I tried to be a vegetarian. Well, for a year I was a vegetarian. And at the end of that year, my body didn't feel right. It didn't feel healthy. I needed something more. And interestingly, the meat that I love the most, which was chicken, is no longer really appealing to me. I'm craving other things. But a huge piece of all of this is actually coming back to our original conversation about what happens to your channel when you take care of your body. Is the channel's clear, and so you have access to your intuition. And you start listening to what your body's telling you it needs versus what your emotions are telling you they need, or what the world outside is telling you you're supposed to do. You start really listening to what your body wants. And when you feed your body what it needs, I'll correct myself in terms of not what it wants, what it needs. Something happens and things start to flow. And for me, there was tons of food noise for a long time. All I could think about was what my next meal was going to be, or what I was going to cook, or how I was going to prepare it. And that's gone. I don't really think about food that way anymore.
It's a big shift.
It's a huge shift. Yeah.
What have you, I mean, that sounds like a major part of like enjoying the leisure time. What's replaced that?
Mm-hmm. So this is why these podcasts are interesting, because if you listen to just this podcast, I think it would be really hard to relate if emotional eating is a big issue for you, as it was for me, as an example. As I have really worked with my nervous system and learned how to train my nervous system, I no longer have the same triggers, which led me to emotional eating. And so I don't need anything anymore to replace it. What's replaced it is space. So time to do other things, time to read, time to learn, time to be with kids. Time to be with myself in a much quieter way than I was before when the noise was there. Yeah. What about for you? We're coming to.
I know we're coming
close to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summarized we eat together, we share meals, but the only thing I'd add in there is that my vegetarianism very much came about for me about just under 7 years ago as a sense of knowing that for me, and this isn't advice for anybody else, for me, I wasn't supposed to eat meat in this lifetime. That was my channel, what I call my Christ consciousness, remains open if I don't eat meat. And that's just this knower inside of me that is directing what I'm meant to eat. And that's why I do it. It's not advice for anyone. And in fact, in all of this, as we close here, we're not health experts. We're not actually offering any type of health advice. We're just telling us our own experience with how we relate to things, what's changed in our life. Pretty much with everything we talk about on the podcast, we're just sharing our experience with how we relate to reality. And we really wanted to share this because it's such a foundational piece of our life. Being healthy, being physically fit, for me anyways, is an integral part of my emotional and spiritual well-being. And I recommend it for anybody. If anyone has any questions about what we do or what I do and wants to sound something off us, give us a call, reach out.
Anytime. Have a great couple weeks and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.